3 hours into Helen's funeral, I counted the eyes watching me. 25 relatives sat in the overcast Thursday morning gloom. My son Mark held the blue folder against his chest like a prize. My daughter Laura whispered to him, grinning. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the priest's voice. The folder was mine, yet there it was in his hands, clutched tight. The betrayal was raw, public, and merciless. Everyone saw it. Everyone but me was smiling. Mark leaned close to me at the graveside and said, low enough for only my ears, "It's ours now, Dad. Time you let go." His breath carried the faint scent of whiskey. The earth was damp beneath my shoes, cold moisture seeping through the leather. Helen's name echoed once, twice in the priest's chant. My wife, gone. My folder, gone. But that was only half the truth. I still had one card left unplayed. The garden house smelled of old pine and faded flowers. After the service, extended family filled the narrow rooms, their laughter louder than grief. Laura poured wine like it was a celebration. Mark paraded the blue folder as though he had won a trophy. I sat alone in Helen's chair, listening to the clink of glasses. My humiliation was complete. They wanted me cornered, silenced, and broken. Yet, deep in my study room, I had something they did not. Laura's voice carried above the chatter. Dad doesn't need any of this. He's 71. Let him keep his memories. We'll take care of the rest. The room applauded with nervous laughter. My stomach turned. I saw her eyes flick to the folder again. She thought it held everything. She thought I was finished. But I remembered the faint scratch of Helen's pen on paper one quiet night. That sound, like dry leaves, had sealed their fate long before today. Mark raised a glass. To new beginnings, to moving forward. His words cut sharp, polished, as though rehearsed. My fingers traced the wooden armrest, the texture rough and splintered. I felt Helen's absence beside me like a hollow echo. Extended family clapped, oblivious to the knife twisting deeper. Mark's smirk widened as he pressed the folder against his chest. He thought he had won. But the study room door upstairs whispered a different truth, one they would never see coming. A cousin leaned close, whispering, "Richard, you look pale. Do you need to sit down?" I forced a smile. My ears caught the muffled crinkle of papers inside the folder. It was louder to me than all their laughter. Helen had warned me about this, her last words pressing like a ghost against my ear. Guard what matters, Richard. They'll never respect you otherwise. I nodded, excusing myself. My steps toward the staircase felt like the slow winding of a clock. The study smelled of dust and ink. The desk lamp hummed faintly, casting a cone of yellow light. There, beneath tax ledgers and forgotten journals, lay another blue folder, identical in color, heavier in weight. The one Mark held was hollow, a decoy I had prepared months ago. I opened the true folder, the edges crisp, the trustee papers stacked inside. My pulse steadied. I had buried this weapon in plain sight. Tonight it would cut cleaner than any knife. Downstairs, laughter roared like a bonfire. Someone turned on music. Glass shattered, followed by more laughter. I touched Helen's framed photo on the desk, her smile faint and knowing. Her name crossed my lips softly, just once. My hand brushed the folder's spine, cool and smooth. The faint motif returned, the rustle of pages like autumn leaves. My humiliation below burned, but here, in silence, I held the key to their undoing. They had stolen nothing. They had only signed their fate. Mark's voice thundered through the floorboards. "It's all here. Dad has no idea what's missing." The family cheered. My grip on the folder tightened. He was parading my humiliation, unaware of the reversal that lurked above him. Laura laughed too, clapping her hands. I closed my eyes, hearing the scratch of Helen's pen again, the night she had guided my hand on the signature line. She had trusted me with this last act of guardianship. I would not fail her. The house felt colder as the night deepened. I stepped into the hallway, folder tucked beneath my arm. Hora caught sight of me and smirked. "Going to bed already, Dad? Don't worry, we've got everything handled." Her words slithered like poison. My fingers itched to respond, but I kept silent. Patience was my shield. The folder's edges pressed into my side, reminding me of the trust deed's weight. Every step I took carried me closer to the phone in my pocket. I sat on the creaking bed in the guest room, folder beside me. The smell of damp linen filled the air. My phone glowed in the dark. One number waited, memorized, sharp as a blade. I dialed slowly, each beep like a countdown. 3, 2, 1. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Recorder's office. How can I help you? My heart slowed. The reversal had begun. Mark's laughter downstairs was about to shatter like thin glass. I whispered the parcel number, 25718400. The clerk repeated it back, precise, exact. I could almost hear Helen's pen again, that scratch of permanence. The clerk confirmed the deed stood in my name alone. My grip on the phone tightened. "Would you like to make an update?" she asked. I closed my eyes, picturing Mark's smug face, Laura's greedy grin. "Yes," I said, steady as stone. "File a restriction, effective immediately." The words tasted like steel. The war had shifted. Footsteps creaked outside the door. Laura's voice called, "Dad, you awake?" I slid the folder beneath the pillow. My throat stayed silent. The knob rattled but did not turn. I heard her whisper to Mark, "He's hiding something. I told you." Their paranoia was rippling, their certainty cracking. The motif returned again, faint paper rustles from the folder, as if alive. Helen's presence filled the room like a cold wind. They would soon learn what she and I had prepared. The morning brought gray light through the curtains. Extended family had left, only Mark and Laura remained, prowling like wolves. Mark tossed the hollow folder onto the table, its papers scattering. "This is worthless," he shouted. Laura's face flushed. I sat at the head of the table, sipping black coffee, calm. "You should have looked closer," I said. My words fell like stones. Mark's hands trembled. He sensed the shift. He didn't yet know the quiet phone call had gutted him. Mark slammed his fist down. "Where is it, Dad?" His rage filled the room, vibrating against the old walls. I placed my cup down gently, the ceramic clink sharp. "Where it always was," I said. Laura's eyes darted to the study door. They wanted to storm it, tear it apart. But they hesitated. Something in my stillness unnerved them. For once, silence favored me. I had become the immovable wall. Their hunger was beginning to devour them from the inside. Laura hissed. "You're old. You can't fight this. We'll outlast you." Her words dripped with venom. I leaned forward, my voice low. "You underestimate what patience can do." The rustle of the folder echoed again, like leaves across stone. Mark's face reddened. He reached across the table, but Laura stopped him. Their unity was cracking. They smelled the reversal, but couldn't name it. I smiled faintly. Their desperation was the scent of victory, long before the battlefield revealed its outcome. That evening, Mark stormed out to the driveway, phone pressed to his ear. I followed silently, staying just within earshot. His words sliced the cold air. "What do you mean the deed's restricted? He can't do that. He's 71, for God's sake." His voice cracked, carrying both rage and fear. I lingered by the window, savoring each syllable. The motif of rustling pages echoed inside me, proof of Helen's wisdom. Their weapon had failed. Mine was already cutting deep. Laura slammed the door when Mark returned. "We have to find a way around this," she spat. Mark dropped into a chair, shoulders sagging. He called them. He actually called them. His disbelief tasted sweeter than any revenge. I sat in silence, the folder once more in my lap. I opened it slowly, letting the rustle of pages carry across the room. Their eyes followed every movement, pupils shrinking. For the first time, fear lived where arrogance once ruled. Mark's voice trembled. "You wouldn't dare cut us out." I lifted the top page, the trust deed, its ink crisp and undeniable. "Wouldn't I?" My words pierced him. The silence stretched, suffocating. Mora's lip quivered, her bravado slipping. The folder lay open, exposed, unyielding. Helen's presence lingered, invisible but strong. I had become the executor of her final wisdom, the guardian of her pen's echo. They wanted my humiliation. Instead, they were staring into the furnace of their undoing. The storm outside lashed against the windows, rain tapping like skeletal fingers. The study light flickered once, twice, then steadied. Mark rubbed his temples, his arrogance crumbling. Laura whispered, "We didn't think you had it in you." I closed the folder with a sharp snap. The sound cut the air. My voice was steady. "You never knew me." Their faces froze, hollow. For years they had mistaken silence for weakness. Tonight, silence had become the most ruthless weapon of all. Mark tried to laugh, but it broke midway, jagged and desperate. "So what, Dad? You'll just die with it?" His words hung heavy. I leaned back, the chair groaning under me. "No," I said. "I'll live with it. That's the difference." Laura's eyes brimmed with something close to tears. The room felt smaller, air thick with dread. The motif of rustling leaves whispered once more, softer this time, final. I had turned the knife they placed in my hand against them. The doorbell rang, sharp against the storm's rhythm. Laura flinched. Mark rose quickly, but I stopped him with a glance. My hand rested on the folder, firm. "Sit," I commanded. The authority in my voice stunned them both. For the first time in years, they obeyed without question. The bell rang again, echoing through the hall. The quiet phone call had rippled into action. Whoever stood at that door carried the weight of my reversal. Their nightmare was only beginning. Heavy boots echoed in the foyer. A voice called, deep and official. "County Recorder's Office. We have documents to deliver." Mark paled. Laura's knuckles whitened as she gripped the table edge. I rose slowly, folder in hand, and walked to the door. The storm wind rushed in as I opened it. Papers, stamped, sealed, official, shifted in the officer's hands. The sound of shuffling parchment, the motif, once more, filled the room. Silence followed. Absolute. The reversal was written in ink. The officer's presence filled the hallway, his eyes steady on me, not them. He placed the packet in my hand. "Filed as requested, sir." My nod was small, but Mark saw it, and his breath caught. Laura whispered, almost pleading, "Dad, please." Her voice was no longer venom, but fear. I turned. The storm wind at my back, the papers pressed against my chest. My silence cut deeper than any answer could. They had cornered me into action. Now it was final. The packet lay on the table, ink still fresh, seals crisp. Mark reached for it, but my hand slammed down, pinning it. The sound cracked like thunder. As eyes widened, fear finally overtaking arrogance. Laura sat frozen, lips trembling. My voice was ice. "This is over." The room shrank, storm pressing against the windows, silence suffocating. I stood, folder under one arm, packet beneath the other. One action remained, sharp as a blade. The cut would be merciless. Laura broke first. "Show us the packet," she said, voice glass thin. I slid it halfway across the table, then stopped. "You should read the seal," I said. Mark squinted at the red stamp. His lips moved silently as he traced the date. Thursday morning, time of filing. The restriction line stared back at him like a wall. He swallowed. The house groaned under the storm, a long, tired breath. Somewhere inside the walls, a pipe ticked, counting down their remaining illusions. Mark tried bravado. "We'll get an attorney. We'll challenge capacity." He said the last word slowly, testing its edge. I leaned on the chair back, feeling the wood's cool grain. "You can call whomever you like, Russell." I opened the folder again, letting pages whisper across the table. But the chain of title is clean. Restrictions are immediate, and I recorded notice to lenders. The room cooled another degree. Their biggest weapon had turned to paper ash in a single night. Laura snatched the hollow folder from yesterday, rifling through its fakes. There has to be something. Paper rasped angrily under her fingers. Mark paced, shoes thudding like a metronome of panic. I watched, without blinking. The scent of wet earth seeped from the windows, the storm pushing damp breath into the room. The more they moved, the more still I became. That was the math I trusted. Their velocity equaled my advantage. Panic burns energy. Patience compounds it into leverage. He bent close, eyes fever bright. What do you want, Dad? The question scraped across the table like a blade. I set the folder down and folded my hands. Respect for the property. Respect for the process. Respect for me. Mark scoffed, but his throat tightened around it. Laura stared at the seal, as if it might peel off by glare alone. I let silence stretch until it pulled taut. In silence, figures reconcile. In silence, debts mature and come due. He laughed again, brittle. Respect doesn't pay bills. Thunder struck like a slammed ledger. I stood, slow and even. True, but clarity does. I tapped the packet. You attempted to pledge my asset without authority. You paraded a decoy. Now, there is written notice preventing any encumbrance. Any lender touching this without my sign-off eats the loss. He blinked, calculation stumbling behind his eyes. The room seemed to tilt. For the first time, he feared numbers more than me. Laura tried a softer tactic. Dad, we were protecting the family. Mortgages are normal. You were overwhelmed. The word pricked. Overwhelmed. The damp linen scent in the guest room returned to my throat, unwelcome. I stared at the rain beads threading down the window like columns of figures. You confuse speed with care, I said, and convenience with loyalty. The folder sighed as I closed it, a small autumn gust. Their faces tightened. Mine did not. The house listened, deciding. They retreated to the kitchen, low voices clashing like cutlery. I stood in the hallway, half shadow, ears open. Mark hissed. Call Kincaid. He said he could slide it before any flags. Laura whispered numbers, a string that ended in 8400. My skin cooled. I had expected a friendly lender. Instead, I heard a fixer. The refrigerator hummed, indifferent. The betrayal sharpened, not because of debt, but because of intent. This had never been about health. It was about capture. Phone to his ear. Mark paced the tiles. Kincaid, it's blocked. You filed a restriction. No, the parcel ends in A400. Yes, today. Move something. Anything. I leaned on the doorframe, the wood biting my palm. The call faded to mutters and curses. Laura rubbed her temples, her rings clicking against her skull. The storm slackened to a wet whisper. I felt the study room behind me, like a vault, quiet and waiting. My plan vector was still unfolding. He stormed past me toward the study, then stopped, inches from the threshold. The smell of ink and old pine drifted out, steadying me. He sneered, but his foot didn't cross. You think a step makes you king? I shook my head. No, it makes you careful. I stepped around him and pulled the desk drawer. A second packet slid forward, edges sharp. Rustle. The sound carried down the hall. Laura's eyes widened. They recognized what weight feels like before they lifted it. The new packet held correspondence, dates, logs of calls. I placed a ledger on the desk, columns handwritten in tidy rows. Document what matters, I said. Memory is theater, ink is court. Mark stared, face draining. He picked up a page and read aloud, voice thinning. Unauthorized communication to lender. Attempted collateralization, misrepresentation of control. He looked up. You were taking notes on me. I didn't answer. The ledger answered enough. Sometimes the simplest sentences are a noose. He stepped back and bumped the wall. The house creaked softly, approving. Laura pressed close, reading upside down. Her breath made the page flutter. You can't actually win with lists, she said. You need people. I lifted the phone again and tapped a contact. I have those too. One ring, two. A calm voice. Good afternoon. Not the clerk. Another official cadence. Papers shuffled in the background. The motif carried through the wire. I said the parcel. He said the word acknowledge. We returned to the dining table, the three of us sitting down in a triangle that felt surgical. The air carried the metallic taste of approaching apology, but none was offered. Mark took a long breath. All right, tell us your terms. I poured water, the pitcher's throat glugging like a small engine. No liens, no pledges, no transfers. You may step into the garden house only by invitation. His nostrils flared. Boundaries sound like bailiffs when you wanted handshakes. Laura glanced toward the window. The clouds thinned to a dull pewter. The storm's drumming softened to a hiss. And if we refuse? I slid a single-page notice toward them, its header blunt. Then you receive this instead. She read, mouth parting. Revocation of access and notice of trespass. Her cheeks colored. You do that to your own children? The word children felt studied in her mouth, a legal prop. My pulse didn't rise. I had already buried worse. Mark's phone buzzed. He answered without looking at me. I listened to the static before the voice broke through. We can't touch it, the caller said, tinny and frustrated. Restriction hit the system. Anyone who files gets tagged. Silence. Then a swallowed curse. He hung up and stared at me as if I had moved a mountain with a paperclip. I didn't smile. Every ledger balances if you let time do the arithmetic. They had tried to cheat time. Time collected. He leaned forward again, softer now. Why are you doing this, Dad? The question arrived late, like a bill forwarded twice. I said nothing for a heartbeat. The house settled its bones. Then I spoke. Because I asked you to grieve with me, and you counted equity instead. The words landed, they didn't echo. Laura looked down at her rings. A drip fell from the window frame and vanished into the dark wood. It sounded like a number being rounded down. I closed the ledger and locked the drawer. The click felt like a stamped date. You will leave now, I said, and you will call first the next time. Mark's jaw clenched. Or what? I lifted the second packet. Russell. Or I send this to the authority you fear more than me. He knew the name. Everyone fears a jurisdiction. Laura stood, chair legs scraping like a reprimand. The air cooled across my forearms, a clean emptiness where pleading used to live. They gathered their coats in stiff silence. At the door, Mark paused. You can't keep this up forever. I nodded once. I don't have to. Paper does. He stared at the floorboards, at the dark knots that looked like tiny eyes. His voice tried one last angle. What if we prove you're unfit? I let the question hang, then set a thin envelope on the console table. Try, I said. Open that first. He slid the letter out, read, and blanched. He turned the letter for Laura to see. Her lips formed the words silently. Evaluation complete. Capacity affirmed. The date was fresh, the signature neat. He exhaled through his nose, a defeated animal sound. You planned this months ago. I said nothing. The smell of rain-wet wool drifted from their coats, stubborn and cold. He looked at the garden house behind me, at its narrow windows and obedient hedges. He was seeing it for the first time as something he could not enter. They left without slamming the door. The quiet made their absence loud. I listened to the house breathe. The pages in the folder made a small settling sound, like leaves finding each other on a path. I carried the packet back to the study room and placed it beneath the lamp. The yellow cone of light held steady, no flicker. I wrote a line in the ledger, notice delivered. Then I underlined it with a slow, single stroke. The day turned. Afternoon brought a brittle sunlight and the thin crackle of drying branches. I stepped into the garden and walked the gravel path, each step a tally. The hedges smelled green and peppery. A neighbor paused at the fence, eyes curious. Family gathering go all right? He asked. I met his gaze. It concluded. He nodded, reading the rest in my face. Gravel shifted under my heels like coins. I breathed in the new air and filed it under reconciled balances. Back inside, the phone rang. Unknown number. I let it hum 3 beats, then answered. A measured voice. This is a courtesy call. Someone contacted us about attaching a loan to your property. I said the parcel. He said the block. Our sentences locked with clean clicks. We declined today, he added. Your restriction is clear. I thanked him and wrote the time in the ledger. The motif returned, faint paper breath against my wrist. Documentation is a form of weatherproofing. Night slid in early, a graphite smear along the windows. I brewed tea, the kettle's thin whistle steady as a bloodless pulse. The house had reverted to small sounds, the clock's patient tick, the faraway pipe's tired sigh. I laid the blue folder on the table and ran a thumb along its spine. It felt less like a weapon now and more like a locked gate. Gates are not dramatic. Gates are decisive. They keep chaos from declaring itself inevitable. Footsteps on gravel again. Not family. A car door clicked, restrained. A knock followed, respectful knuckles against wood. I opened to a man in a raincoat with a leather case. "Evening," he said. "Courier. Documents requiring signature." He smelled faintly of eucalyptus and old paper. I invited him to the hall table. He set out forms with practiced economy. Rustle. The signature lines waited. Small, hungry mouths. I read each title slowly, letting the minutes do their silent arithmetic. He pointed to the last page. "Acknowledgement of restriction and notice to known lenders," he said. "Filing service included." His tone was neutral, the way a scale speaks by silence. I initialed, wrote my name, dated, and placed the pen down. The nib clicked softly. He gathered the stack, squared its edges, and slid it home. The rustle with a closing prayer. He tipped his head, and the door swallowed him into the cooling night. The house's shoulders dropped an inch. I locked the door and turned off the hall light. The garden house held its breath, listening to the town's distant tires over wet asphalt. In the study, the ledger waited open to a blank line. I wrote one sentence. "Outside notice complete." The loop of the final letter came out clean. I closed the cover. Pages whispered together, a small congregation agreeing. Then I lifted the phone, scrolled to a name I had not used in years, and pressed call. The name I called surfaced after years, like a coin from silt. "Avila," he said, steady as a metronome. I laid out the facts in lean numbers. He answered with dates. The trust we drafted months ago remained quiet, funded, and ready. Title to the small house on Mercer Lane sat insulated. Life estate to me, remainder to a scholarship trust. Russell. I opened the blue folder and slid out authorizations. He said, "If you wish, we can perfect filings tonight." We met at dusk in his office, blinds drawn against the pewter sky. The lobby smelled of copier ozone and wet wool. He pressed gloved fingers to a stack of forms. "2 filings," he said. "Affirm the restriction. Perfect the Mercer conveyance." My pen hovered. The nib trembled once, then steadied. Outside, traffic murmured like distant rain. He added, "Courier on standby." I nodded. The rustle of pages moved like dry leaves across a courtyard. Numbers were stepping into armor. On my walk back to the car, I saw them. Mark and Laura idled across the street in a rented sedan, lights off, silhouettes tense. Laura held a phone to her ear, head bowed, a confessional without a priest. Mark watched my hands, not my face. Predators track motion first. He said something I could not hear, and pointed toward Mercer Lane on the map. The engine coughed awake. I did not hurry. Haste is a tell. Patience is a trap. I drove the slow way, through streets that remembered me. The night air tasted metallic, like the inside of an old safe. In the passenger seat, the folder breathed against the seatbelt, pages whispering their dry promise. I touched the ledger in my coat pocket and felt the square comfort of its spine. Every entry inside was a rung on a ladder I had built while they were laughing. Gravel finally crunched beneath my tires. Mercer Lane exhaled a narrow welcome. The set-in house sat gray and low under a street lamp halo, shingles dark from the earlier rain. A rosemary bush brushed my ankle with a peppered scent as I unlocked the gate. The porch boards were cool, their paint tired but honest. Inside, the air held the soft musk of old pine and tea. A clock ticked in the front room, patient and impartial. I set the folder on the table and listened to the neighborhood's small, nocturnal arithmetic. Mrs. Patel, the caretaker, arrived from next door with a thermos and worry in her eyes. "You all right, Mr. Richard?" she asked, voice soft. I nodded once. "Routine maintenance," I said. She glanced at the folder, then at my hands. "My nephew can sit on the porch if you want a pair of eyes." I shook my head. "Not necessary." She lingered, then left me to the math of paper. Doors sighed, locks seated, and the room settled around me. Headlights washed across the curtains, then cut. A car door clicked, then another. Footsteps on gravel approached, careful, rehearsed. Mark's voice, low. Check the side window. Laura again. He can't be fast. I let them circle like tired planets. The clock answered them with its steady tick. When the porch board groaned, I spoke through the door. Leave the latch alone and step back. Silence buckled, then Mark laughed without humor. Open up, Dad. I opened. Nothing. The folder waited. Their knock turned urgent. Then performative. We only want to talk, Laura said. Pitch sounded smooth. I spoke through wood. This house is held in trust. Life estate to me. Remainder to a scholarship fund. Your names are nowhere. Mark swore under his breath. The street lamp hummed. I could feel their eyes pushing against the door as if pressure could loosen hinges. Paper does not answer to fists. It answers to dates. The clock ticked once, twice, drawing a boundary. A neighbor's porch light clicked on. Another curtain stirred. Public presence materialized like dew. Mark lowered his voice. You think this makes you safe? The question hummed there, mean and small. I slid the notice of trespass into the mail slot and let it clatter to the porch boards. That makes me safe, I said. Laura's shoes scuffed, retreating half a step. The air cooled against my wrists. Somewhere, a dog collar jingled. I imagined ink drying with calm purpose. He tried authority. We have a right to see our inheritance. I let the silence stretch until it thinned. Inheritance is a story told in future tense, I said. Tonight is present tense. Present tense belongs to me. Russell. I turned another page and marked a time. Across the street, a screen door opened. A man in a county windbreaker watched, arms folded. He was not here for me. He was here for equilibrium. Mark's shoulders sank a fraction. Equilibrium held. Laura's phone lit her face blue-white. Kincaid, we're at Mercer, she whispered. He moved the asset. While pause, a hissed curse. Parcel ends 8400. No, that's the other one. She froze, realized she had said the numbers aloud, and glanced at the windbreaker across the street. The motif returned, light as moth wings, paper brushing paper, in my hand. Numbers spoken in panic are roadmaps. Numbers written in calm are locks. I preferred locks tonight. I dialed Avila again, low and even. File Mercer now, I said. Then, send lender notices referencing today's restriction and any adverse claims. He answered with a single syllable that sounded like a stamp. I ended the call and breathed through the hush. On the porch, Mark shifted tactics. We could fix this together, he said. Just tell me what to sign. The irony tightened the air. He feared signing now. Signing had become a door that only I could open. Inside, I walked the rooms once, touching door frames like stations. The kitchen window cooled my palm. The clock's tick stitched the minutes into cloth. I set fresh paper on the table and wrote 3 lines. Restriction confirmed. Mercer perfected. Notices sent. Russell. The sound was leaves gathering themselves. A thin draft carried the smell of damp earth through the screen. I pictured ledgers I had kept my whole career. Every neat column a rail against turbulence. Rails guide trains home. Footsteps retreated down the path. Then a car door flammed, and silence poured back across the porch. I let 10 minutes pass without moving, letting time do its seep work. When I finally opened the door, the street was empty. Only the neighbor's windbreaker remained at his post, a lighthouse with arms. He nodded once. I nodded back. The ledger received another line. Attempted entry deterred. I locked the door again and poured water into a clean, ringless glass. The phone rang. Unknown. I answered. A dry, administrative voice filled my ear. This is a lender notification line. We received your adverse claim regarding an attempted trust deed for $840,000. A pause. Paper moved on his desk, distant but clear. Given your restriction and the claim, the facility is withdrawn. Any further action will trigger review. I thanked him and wrote the time. The pen moved without tremor. Some victories arrived like a stamp. Already done. Gravel again. Mark returned without Laura, shoulders hunched, hands bare in the chill. He stopped at the bottom step. Dad, listen, he said. We got ahead of ourselves. I got ahead of myself. The apology was not clean. It had stones in it. I watched his face search for the right arithmetic. What do you need from me? He asked. The question finally had the shape of a ledger. Boundaries observed. Silence respected. No more pressure, I said. He nodded once. He sat on the step, eyes on the street, voice low. It started with a simple push. Then numbers looked easy. Then Kincaid said it would be clean. He rubbed his hands. I thought grief would make you look elsewhere. The sentence trailed. The clock answered him with its old patience. I did not offer comfort or cruelty. I offered air. After a while, he stood. You will hear from me only by request, he said. Good, I answered. The night deepened. When the car finally left, the neighborhood exhaled. I gathered the packet and the ledger, slid them into the folder, and tested the latch on the gate. It clicked home with a small moral clarity. Back inside, I brewed tea. Steam rose, simple and clean. Rustle. I opened one last envelope from Avila. Inside lay a single sheet, bold header, spare text, acknowledgement of perfected interest, Mercer Lane. I read it twice, not for doubt, but for the medicine of certainty. The house returned to small arithmetic, the drip of a faucet now closed, the tick of the clock, the faint rasp of the folder's spine against wood. I stacked documents edge to edge until they sat square, then placed the pen beside them, aligned. Outside, a car eased past without stopping. Far away, a siren sighed once and went quiet. I checked each lock, each window, each hinge. The ledger waited open at a final space, a clean line unclaimed. I set the acknowledgement on the ledger, drew the pen across the final line, and wrote one word in neat accountant script, complete. Then I pressed the folder closed with my palm and turned off the lamp.